The wind screamed like a wounded animal across the Montana plains, and Isaac Keller knew the blizzard would claim lives before morning broke over the distant peaks. He had been riding toward Fort Bowie for 3 days straight. Cattle business concluded early in Helena, when the storm caught him between settlements. The temperature had dropped so fast his horse's breath turned to ice crystals in the air. Isaac pulled his coat tighter and urged his mare forward through the deepening snow, scanning the white chaos for any kind of shelter. His ranch lay 2 days south, too far to reach in this weather. The abandoned line shack he remembered passing last autumn should be somewhere ahead if he hadn't lost his bearings entirely. The mare whinnied nervously, ears swiveling. Isaac strained to hear over the wind's howl. There it was again, a sound that didn't belong to the storm. Human voices, or maybe just one voice, crying out in distress. He turned the mare toward the sound, knowing it could be his death but unable to ride past someone in trouble. His father had raised him better than that. God rest the old man's soul. Through the wall of white, a dark shape emerged. A wagon, tilted at an angle with one wheel broken, the horses gone. And there, huddled against the leeward side, was a figure in white that looked like a ghost until Isaac got closer and realized it was a woman in a wedding dress, her veil torn and whipping in the wind, her face red from cold and tears. "Miss," he called out, dismounting quickly. "Miss, can you hear me?" She looked up at him with eyes the color of summer sky, now clouded with hypothermia and despair. Her lips were turning blue. She tried to speak, but her teeth chattered too violently. Isaac didn't waste time on questions. He stripped off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her, lifting her easily despite her protests. She was small, delicate, and far too cold. He secured her on his horse, then climbed up behind her, wrapping one arm around her waist to keep her steady. The line shack had to be close. It had to be, or they would both freeze to death in this white hell. He found it more by luck than skill, the small structure appearing out of the snow like an answer to prayer. Isaac practically fell off the horse, dragging the woman with him. He kicked open the door, grateful it wasn't locked or blocked, and pulled her inside. The interior was dark and cold but blessedly free from the wind. His hands shook as he worked, muscle memory taking over. He had survived enough Montana winters to know the routine. First, get the woman away from the door. He laid her on the single cot in the corner, piling the dusty blankets he found in a trunk over her shaking form. Then he turned to the fireplace, praying the chimney wasn't blocked. Someone had left wood stacked inside, dried and ready. Within minutes, he had flames crackling, orange light pushing back the darkness. Only then did he tend to his horse, bringing the mare inside the shack. It wasn't proper, but nothing about this situation was proper, and the horse would die outside. He rubbed her down quickly, then returned to the woman on the cot. She had stopped shaking quite so violently, but tears still streamed down her face, cutting tracks through the dirt and cold. Her wedding dress, he could see now, had once been beautiful, all lace and satin, but it was torn and stained, completely inadequate for a Montana blizzard. Her dark hair had fallen from its elaborate styling, hanging in wet tangles around her shoulders. "You are safe now," Isaac said gently, crouching beside the cot. "Can you tell me your name?" Fiona," she managed through chattering teeth. "Fiona Sterling." "I am Isaac Keller. You are suffering from the cold, Miss Sterling. I need to make sure you do not have frostbite." "May I check your hands and feet?" She nodded, still crying, but the tears were quieter now. Isaac carefully unwrapped the blankets enough to examine her extremities. Her hands were red and painful looking, but the color was returning as she warmed. Her feet, however, shod only in thin white slippers now soaked through, worried him more. He removed the slippers gently and checked her toes. They were dangerously pale. "I need to warm these," he told her, and before she could respond, he tucked her feet against his stomach under his shirt, sharing his body heat. It was forward improper, but frostbite was deadly and propriety could wait. Fiona gasped at the contact but didn't pull away. "Thank you," she whispered. "I thought I was going to die out there." "What happened?" Isaac asked, continuing to warm her feet while feeding the fire with his free hand. "Why were you alone in a wedding dress in the middle of a blizzard?" Fresh tears spilled over. "I was running away." "From the wedding? From him?" Isaac waited, knowing she would explain if she needed to, knowing sometimes people just needed silence to gather their thoughts. "My stepfather arranged it," Fiona said after a long moment, her voice steadier as warmth returned to her body. "Robert Morrison, a cattle buyer from Fort Bowie. I had never met him until a week ago. He is 43 years old and has buried 2 wives already. My stepfather owed him money, and this was the solution. I am 21, not a child, but he treated me like property to be bartered." The bitterness in her voice cut through the small room sharper than the wind outside. Isaac felt anger kindle in his chest, hot and immediate. He had seen too many women treated as commodities, their wishes and dreams irrelevant to the men who controlled their fates. "So you ran," he said simply. "The ceremony was this afternoon in Fort Bowie at the church. I said I needed a moment alone before we began. I climbed out the window, found a wagon behind the general store with the horses hitched, and I just drove away. I did not even think about where I was going. I just needed to get away from him, from that church, from the rest of my life as his property." She paused, swallowing hard. The horses spooked when the storm hit. They broke free and ran. The wagon wheel broke when it hit a rock, and I could not fix it. I thought about trying to walk, but I did not know which direction to go. Everything was white. So I waited, and I cried, and I prayed someone would find me before I froze. "And someone did," Isaac said, meeting her eyes. In the firelight they were extraordinary, intelligent, and fierce despite her tears. "You are safe now, Miss Sterling. The storm will blow itself out by morning, and then we will figure out what comes next. They will be looking for me," Fiona said, fear creeping into her voice. "Robert will not let me go easily. He paid my stepfather $500 for this arrangement." Isaac's jaw tightened. $500. A woman's entire future sold for the price of a good breeding bull. "Let them look. The storm has covered your tracks and mine. No one can move in this weather anyway. By the time they can search, we will have options." "We," Fiona repeated, looking at him with something like hope. "I will not abandon you to that fate, Miss Sterling. My mother raised me to believe women are not property. She would haunt me from her grave if I sent you back to be sold." A small smile touched Fiona's lips, the first he had seen. It transformed her face, chasing away some of the fear and cold. "Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman." She was, and stubborn, and kinder than anyone I have known since. Isaac felt her feet growing warmer against his skin, the dangerous pallor fading. "How do your feet feel now?" "Better. Tingly and painful, but better." "Good. That means the blood is flowing again. You should keep them wrapped in blankets for a while longer." He carefully withdrew, tucking her feet into the warmest blanket, then stood to add more wood to the fire. "Are you hungry? I have some dried beef and hardtack in my saddlebag." "I have not eaten since breakfast," Fiona admitted. "I was too nervous about the wedding." Isaac retrieved his saddlebag and divided his meager supplies, handing her a generous portion. They ate in companionable silence, the storm raging outside while warmth slowly filled the little shack. His horse dozed near the door, content now that she was dry and out of the wind. "Tell me about yourself, Mr. Keller," Fiona said after she had eaten, Color had returned to her cheeks and her shivering had stopped entirely. "What brings a cowboy out in a blizzard? Just Isaac, please." "And I am a rancher, actually. I own a spread about 2 days south of here, near the Yellowstone River. I was in Helena on business and was heading home when the storm caught me. I remembered this line shack from a drive last year and was trying to reach it." "You own a ranch?" Fiona sounded surprised. "You seem young to own land." "I am 27. My father left me the ranch when he passed 3 years ago. It is not a large operation, but it is mine and it is honest work." He paused, considering how much to share. "My mother was a school teacher from Boston who came west with her family. She taught me to read and write, to think about the world beyond cattle and horses. My father taught me everything else." "Boston," Fiona said wistfully. "I have always wanted to see a real city. I grew up in Missouri, but my mother died when I was 15, and my father remarried within a year. We moved to Montana Territory when I was 18, following some promise of gold that never panned out. My stepfather drank away what little money we had, and then he started making arrangements. First, he tried to marry me to a mine foreman, but that fell through. Then Robert Morrison came to town, and suddenly everything was decided without anyone asking what I wanted." The pain in her voice was palpable. Isaac wanted to say something comforting, but empty platitudes would insult them both. "What did you want?" he asked instead. Fiona looked at him, genuine surprise crossing her face as if no one had ever asked her that question before. "I wanted to choose," she said softly. "I wanted to fall in love, not be sold. I wanted a man who saw me as a partner, not a possession. I wanted a chance at happiness, real happiness, not just survival." She laughed bitterly. "I know it sounds foolish. Most women do not get to choose. But I read books, Isaac. I read stories about people who married for love, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I could have that too." "It is not foolish," Isaac said firmly. "My parents married for love. They were happy together every day until my mother got sick. That is what marriage should be." They talked through the night as the storm raged, swapping stories of their pasts, their hopes, their fears. Isaac learned that Fiona could read Latin and loved poetry, that she had taught herself to cook from an old cookbook. Her mother left her, that she was terrified of snakes but loved thunderstorms. She learned that he had built his ranch from nearly nothing, that he broke his own horses, that he played the harmonica badly but with enthusiasm, that he believed in treating everyone fairly, regardless of their station. As dawn approached, the wind finally began to quiet. Isaac stood and stretched, his back stiff from sitting on the floor near Fiona's cot. He walked to the window and scraped away the frost. The world outside was buried in white, but the snow had stopped falling and the eastern sky was lightening to gray. "The storm has passed," he said. Fiona sat up slowly, still wrapped in blankets. "What happens now?" Isaac turned to face her. "That depends on what you want. I can take you back to Fort Bowie if that is your choice, or I can take you to my ranch. You would be safe there. My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, would be a proper chaperone. You could stay until you decide what you want to do next." "Your housekeeper?" Fiona asked, curiosity overcoming her anxiety for a moment. "Her husband worked for my father. When he died in a riding accident, my father offered her a position. She is fierce and practical and makes the best apple pie in Montana Territory. She will take one look at you and immediately adopt you. And you would do this, harbor a runaway bride." Fiona's voice carried disbelief and hope in equal measure. "I would do this," Isaac confirmed. "But you need to understand what it might mean. Morrison will not give up easily if he paid that much. Your stepfather will likely support him. They might cause trouble." "I am already in trouble," Fiona pointed out. "At least this way it is trouble of my own choosing." Isaac nodded slowly. Then we head south to my ranch as soon as I am sure it is safe to travel. The snow is deep, so it will take us longer than usual. 3 days, maybe 4. I have nowhere else to go, Fiona said quietly. And you are the only person who has been kind to me in longer than I can remember. I will trust you. Those 4 words, I will trust you, settled into Isaac's chest like a weight and a gift simultaneously. This woman, who had every reason to distrust men, was placing her safety in his hands. He would not let her down. They left the line shack an hour after sunrise, Isaac's mare carrying them both through snow that reached her chest in places. He had fashioned a better wrap for Fiona from one of the blankets, protecting her ruined wedding dress from the elements. The dress itself was impossible to salvage for warmth, designed for beauty rather than function, but the blanket worked well enough. Travel was slow and treacherous. The mare struggled through the drifts, and Isaac had to dismount frequently to lead her through the worst sections. Fiona proved tougher than her delicate appearance suggested, never complaining despite the cold and discomfort. She sat straight in the saddle when he mounted behind her, her back pressed against his chest for warmth, and she helped watch for dangers he might miss. They stopped frequently to rest the horse and warm themselves. Isaac built small fires during their breaks, and they shared his dwindling supplies of food. On the second day, he managed to shoot a rabbit, and they roasted it over their fire, the fresh meat a welcome change from dried beef. "Have you ever been married?" Fiona asked that evening as they sat close to their fire, the stars brilliant overhead in the clear, cold sky. "No," Isaac replied. "I came close once, a girl named Margaret from Helena. We courted for 6 months, but when she saw the ranch, saw how remote it was, how hard the life would be, she decided she wanted something else. Someone else. She married a banker. Do you think she made the right choice?" Isaac considered the question carefully. "For her, yes. She wanted comfort and society, things I could not give her. I wanted a partner who loved the land as much as I did. We wanted different things, so it ended. No hard feelings, just different dreams. You are remarkably understanding about it. What good would bitterness do?" "She is happy now, from what I hear. 3 children and a big house in town. That is what she wanted." He poked at the fire with a stick. "What about you? Have you ever been in love?" Fiona shook her head. "No. There was a boy when I was 17 before we moved to Montana. He was a farmhand, sweet and shy. We talked a few times and I thought maybe he would court me, but my father died before anything could develop, and then everything changed. After that, my stepfather watched me too closely. I think he always planned to use me somehow." The sadness in her voice made Isaac's chest tighten. "You deserve better than that." "Most people get what they get, not what they deserve," Fiona said pragmatically. "But I am trying to change that. Running away was the first real choice I have made in years." "And look where it got you," Isaac said with a small smile. "Camping in the snow with a cowboy you just met." Fiona returned his smile, and Isaac felt something shift in his chest. "I have been in worse places," she said, "and present company is better than the alternative." On the 3rd day, they spotted riders in the distance. Isaac immediately guided the mare into a stand of trees, hiding them from view. His hand moved instinctively to the rifle in his saddle holster, but he hoped he would not need it. "You think it is them?" Fiona whispered, her body tense against his. "Cannot tell from here, but we will wait until they pass." He could feel her heart racing, and he kept one arm around her waist, steadying her. "Breathe. We are well hidden." They waited in tense silence as the riders grew closer. Isaac counted 4 men, moving slowly through the snow, clearly searching. One of them had to be Morrison. The group stopped not far from their hiding place, close enough that Isaac could hear their voices. "No tracks," one man said, sounding frustrated. The storm covered everything. "She has to be dead by now," another voice replied. "No way she survived 3 days in that blizzard." "We keep looking," a third voice cut in, harder and colder than the others. "I paid good money for that girl, and I want what I bought, alive or dead." Her stepfather swore she was docile and obedient, but clearly he lied. That had to be Morrison. Isaac felt Fiona flinch against him, and he tightened his arm around her protectively. "She probably froze in the first night," the second voice said. "This is a waste of time, Robert." "When I want your opinion, I will ask for it," Morrison snapped. "We search for 2 more days, then we head back. But I want everyone in Fort Bowie to know she ran and died because of it. No one cheats Robert Morrison." The riders moved on, their voices fading into the distance. Isaac waited a full hour before moving, making certain they were truly gone. When he finally emerged from the trees, Fiona was shaking, but not from cold this time. "Did you hear him?" she asked, her voice thin with fear and anger. "He wants me dead just to prove a point." "He does not care about me at all. I am just property he owns." "You are not property," Isaac said firmly, "and he will not find you. We are almost to my ranch. Another day, maybe less. Once we are there, you will be safe." "How can you promise that?" "Because I will make sure of it." The conviction in his own voice surprised him. He had known this woman for only 3 days, but the thought of anyone hurting her made his blood boil. "You saved yourself, Fiona. You climbed out that window and chose your own path. I am just helping you stay on it." They reached the ranch the next afternoon, the familiar sight of his buildings appearing through the snow like a homecoming. The ranch house was modest but well built, logs chinked tight against the cold, smoke rising from the chimney. The barn and outbuildings were in good repair, and he could see his ranch hands moving about their work despite the deep snow. A small figure appeared on the porch as they approached, and Isaac smiled. Mrs. Chen stood there, arms crossed, her face stern until she saw Fiona's condition. Then her expression shifted to concern, and she hurried down the steps with surprising speed for a woman in her 60s. "Isaac Keller, what have you brought home?" she demanded, but her hands were already reaching for Fiona, helping her down from the horse with gentle efficiency. "This is Miss Fiona Sterling. She needs help." Isaac dismounted and quickly explained the situation while Mrs. Chen guided Fiona toward the house. The older woman's expression grew darker with each detail. "Men," she spat when he finished. "Selling girls like cattle. Come, child. You need a hot bath and proper clothes and about a week of my cooking. Isaac, you see to your horse and then get inside. You look half frozen yourself." Isaac obeyed, tending to his tired mare before heading inside. The ranch house felt wonderfully warm after days in the cold. He found Fiona in his mother's old room, Mrs. Chen fussing over her with hot water and clean clothes. Fiona looked small and lost in one of his mother's dresses, but her eyes found his across the room, and she smiled with such gratitude that Isaac felt his heart skip. "Thank you," she mouthed silently. He nodded and retreated to give her privacy, heading to his own room to clean up. When he emerged an hour later, bathed and in fresh clothes, he found Fiona sitting at his kitchen table, a steaming bowl of stew in front of her. Mrs. Chen was already making more food, moving through the kitchen with practiced ease. "Sit," Mrs. Chen ordered Isaac. "Eat. Then you will both tell me everything and we will decide what to do." Over dinner, they explained the full situation. Mrs. Chen listened without interrupting, her weathered face thoughtful. When they finished, she sat back and regarded them both seriously. "This Morrison will come here eventually," she said. "Men like that do not give up, but we will be ready. You did the right thing, Isaac. And you, girl, you were brave. Stupid, maybe, to run in a blizzard, but brave." "I did not know it would become a blizzard," Fiona said defensively. It was just snowing when I left. Montana weather, Mrs. Chen said, shaking her head. You are from Missouri. Well, you will learn our weather is meaner, but you are safe here. This is a good ranch with good men working it. Isaac runs it fairly, and everyone here would protect their own. I am not theirs to protect, Fiona pointed out. You are under Isaac's roof. That makes you one of ours. Mrs. Chen stood and began clearing dishes. Now, both of you rest. Tomorrow we will make proper plans. Isaac showed Fiona to the room that had been his mother's, a space he had kept clean but untouched since her death. You will be comfortable here, he said. Mrs. Chen will make sure you have everything you need. Isaac, Fiona said as he turned to leave. He stopped, looking back at her. I meant what I said earlier. Thank you. You saved my life, but more than that, you gave me back my choices. I will never forget that. You are welcome, he said simply. Sleep well, Fiona. But sleep did not come easily that night. Isaac lay in his bed, listening to the house settle around him, thinking about the woman sleeping in his mother's room. 3 days ago he had been alone, his life steady and predictable. Now everything felt different, charged with possibility and danger. He thought about Morrison's cold voice, about Fiona's courage, about the way she looked at him with trust, and something else he was afraid to name. The next morning brought clear skies and a visit from his foreman, Thomas Wright, a weathered cowboy in his 50s who had worked for Isaac's father. Thomas listened to the story without comment, then nodded slowly. Morrison is known in Fort Bowie, Thomas said. Hard man. Mean when he drinks, which is often. Buried 2 wives, like you said. One died in childbirth, but there were rumors about the other. Some folks said she fell down the stairs. Some said she was pushed. Fiona, who had been listening from the doorway, went pale. And my stepfather sold me to him. Your stepfather is either desperate or evil, Thomas said bluntly. Maybe both. But you are here now and we take care of our own. I will spread the word to the men. If Morrison shows up, we will be ready. I do not want violence, Isaac said firmly. Just make sure everyone knows to watch for strangers and to come get me if anyone arrives. Over the following days, Fiona settled into life on the ranch. Mrs. Chen put her to work helping in the kitchen, and Fiona threw herself into learning with fierce determination. She was an excellent cook already, and Mrs. Chen praised her pie crust, which made Fiona beam with pride. Isaac found excuses to be near the house more often than usual. He taught Fiona to ride on his gentlest horse, a mare named Daisy. She was nervous at first but determined, and soon she was trotting around the corral with confidence. He showed her the ranch, the cattle with their heavy winter coats, the horses in the barn, the endless expanse of his land stretching toward the mountains. It is beautiful, Fiona said one afternoon as they stood on a ridge overlooking the valley. The snow had started to melt, revealing brown grass underneath. So much space, so much freedom. That is why I love it, Isaac said. Out here you can be yourself. No one tells you who to be or what to do. You succeed or fail on your own merit. That sounds lonely, Fiona observed. Sometimes it is, Isaac admitted, but it is honest. I would rather be lonely and free than crowded and controlled. Fiona looked at him with those summer sky eyes, and Isaac felt the pull again, stronger this time. They had been dancing around something for days now, a growing connection neither seemed willing to name. You still feel lonely? She asked quietly. Now that I am here. No, he said, meeting her gaze. I do not. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken words. Then Daisy nickered impatiently and the spell broke. They rode back to the ranch in comfortable silence, but something had shifted. They both felt it. That evening, Mrs. Chen found Isaac alone in the barn checking on a pregnant mare. You are going to marry that girl, she said without preamble. Isaac nearly dropped his lantern. Mrs. Chen, she just escaped one forced marriage. I am not about to suggest another. I did not say force her. I said you are going to marry her. Anyone with eyes can see how you look at each other. Mrs. Chen crossed her arms. But you need to court her proper. She needs to choose you freely after what she went through. You understand? I understand. Isaac paused, then decided to be honest. I care about her, Mrs. Chen, more than I should after such a short time. But I do not know how she feels, and I do not want to pressure her. Then be patient. Give her time. But do not wait too long. A woman like that will not stay unattached forever, and Morrison is still out there. Mrs. Chen's expression softened. She is good for you, Isaac. The first time since your mother died that I have seen you truly happy. Do not let fear make you lose something precious. Isaac took Mrs. Chen's advice to heart. He courted Fiona slowly, carefully, always giving her space to retreat if she wished. He brought her wildflowers when he found them poking through the melting snow. He sat with her in the evenings, reading aloud from his small collection of books while she mended clothes by lamplight. He taught her to play checkers, and she beat him so soundly that he suspected she had been holding back her skill. They talked about everything and nothing. She told him about her mother, a gentle woman who had loved music and poetry. He told her about building the ranch, the lean years when he thought he might lose everything, the triumph of his first successful cattle drive. They shared dreams and fears, hopes and regrets. Spring crept slowly across the Montana plains, and with it came the inevitable. Morrison arrived at the ranch on a warm April morning, accompanied by 4 men and Fiona's stepfather, a weak-chinned man named Gerald Sterling who would not meet Isaac's eyes. Isaac had been expecting this. He stepped out onto the porch, aware of his ranch hands positioning themselves strategically around the yard. Thomas stood near the barn, rifle held casually but ready. Mrs. Chen had taken Fiona inside, but Isaac knew she was watching through the window. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Isaac asked politely. Morrison was a big man, running to fat with cold eyes and a hard mouth. "I am looking for my bride. I have reason to believe she is here." "Your bride?" Isaac kept his voice neutral. "I was not aware you were married. Do not play games with me, boy. Fiona Sterling. She ran from our wedding 3 months ago. Her father here says you helped her." "I am not her father," Gerald Sterling spoke up, his voice wheedling. "I am her stepfather, and she owes me for years of raising her. She owes Mr. Morrison for the agreement we made." "A woman cannot be owned," Isaac said flatly. "If Miss Sterling is here, it is as my guest, not your property." Morrison's face darkened. "I paid $500 for her. That is a legal contract. Selling a person is not legal. Slavery ended a long time ago." Isaac crossed his arms. "You should leave my property now." "Not without my bride." Morrison dismounted and his men followed suit. "We can do this easy or we can do this hard." "You can try the hard way," Thomas called out from the barn. "But I should warn you. There are 8 of us and 5 of you, and we are all armed." Isaac saw Morrison calculating, weighing his options. Then Fiona herself stepped out onto the porch and every head turned. She looked different from the terrified girl in the torn wedding dress. She wore a simple calico dress that Mrs. Chen had made for her, her hair braided neatly down her back. But it was her expression that had changed most. She stood tall, her chin up, fear in her eyes but determination stronger. "Fiona," Gerald Sterling began, but she cut him off. "I am not going anywhere with you," she said clearly. "Either of you. You sold me like livestock, Gerald, you and my mother's memory. And you, Mr. Morrison, you are cruel and cold, and I would rather die than marry you." "You do not have a choice," Morrison snarled. "I bought you fair and square. I am a human being, not a cow. I have every choice." Fiona moved to stand beside Isaac, not touching him but close enough that her message was clear. Isaac saved my life and asked nothing in return. He gave me shelter and safety and respect. He gave me choices. That is more than any of you ever did. You little witch. Morrison took a step toward the porch, and suddenly Isaac's pistol was in his hand, pointed steadily at Morrison's chest. That is close enough, Isaac said, his voice deadly calm. You are not welcome here. Leave now and do not come back. This is not over, Morrison threatened. I will go to the law. I will tell everyone what you did, how you stole my bride. Please do, Isaac said. Tell the sheriff in Fort Bowie that you tried to buy a woman against her will. See how that goes. Montana territory may be rough, but we do not take kindly to men who treat women as property. Now get off my land. For a long moment, Morrison stood his ground, rage contorting his features. Then he spat in the dirt and turned back to his horse. This is not over, he repeated. You have made an enemy today, Keller. I will survive, Isaac replied dryly. The men mounted and rode away, Gerald Sterling casting one last look back at Fiona. She stared at him coldly until he turned away. Only when they were out of sight did she sag against the porch railing, shaking. Isaac holstered his gun and turned to her, not touching her but standing close. Are you all right? I told them no, Fiona said wonderingly. I looked Morrison in the eye and told him no, I never thought I could do that. You were magnificent, Isaac said honestly. Fiona looked up at him and suddenly she was in his arms, holding onto him like an anchor. Isaac wrapped his arms around her, feeling her trembling against him. You are safe, he murmured. I promise you, you are safe. I know, she said into his chest. I know I am, because you are here. That evening, after Fiona had recovered her composure and they had all gathered in the kitchen for dinner, Mrs. Chen made an announcement. That man will not give up so easily, she said. Men like Morrison hold grudges. Fiona, you need more protection than just living here as a guest. You need to become part of this ranch officially. What do you mean? Fiona asked. I mean you should marry Isaac, Mrs. Chen said bluntly. Make it legal. Then Morrison has no claim, no argument. You would be Isaac's wife, not some runaway bride. Mrs. Chen, Isaac protested, his face heating. That is not how proposals work. Bah, proposals. We do not have time for romance with that man plotting revenge. But Mrs. Chen saw the distress on Fiona's face and softened. I am sorry, child. I am an old woman and too practical for my own good. Forget I said anything. Later, after dinner, Isaac found Fiona sitting on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. He settled beside her, neither speaking for a long while. Mrs. Chen was not entirely wrong, Fiona finally said. Morrison will not stop. And I hate that I am putting you in danger by being here. You are not putting me anywhere. I chose to help you. I choose to keep helping you. Isaac paused, gathering his courage, but she was not right either, not about the reasons. What do you mean? Isaac turned to face her fully. If I were to ask you to marry me, it would not be for protection or practicality. It would be because over these past months, I have come to care for you deeply. Because I wake up happier knowing you are under my roof. Because your laugh makes even the hardest days better. Because when I think about my future, I cannot imagine it without you in it. Fiona's breath caught. Isaac. I am not asking yet, he said quickly. You need time and you deserve to make that choice freely without pressure, but I want you to know how I feel. I want you to know that what I feel has nothing to do with Morrison or obligation. It is about you, Fiona, only you. Tears glimmered in her eyes, but she was smiling. Can I tell you something? Anything. When you found me in that blizzard, I thought you were an angel come to carry me to heaven. Then I realized you were just a man, a good man trying to help. But over these months, I have learned you are so much more than that. You are kind and strong and honest. You make me feel safe but also brave. You make me want to be better, to do more, to live fully." She reached out and took his hand, her fingers warm against his. "I am not ready to marry again yet. The idea still frightens me after what almost happened. But I am falling in love with you, Isaac Keller, and I wanted you to know that too." Isaac felt like the sun had risen in his chest. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Then we have time, all the time you need." They sat together as the sun set and the stars emerged, hands linked, hearts opening slowly to the possibility of forever. Morrison tried twice more over the following months to cause trouble. The first time, he brought the sheriff from Fort Bowie, claiming Isaac had stolen his property. The sheriff, a fair man named Dawson, interviewed Fiona privately and concluded she was there of her own free will. He warned Morrison to drop the matter or face harassment charges. The second time was more serious. Morrison and his men tried to ambush Isaac when he was alone, driving cattle to a far pasture. But Thomas had been watching, and he arrived with 3 other ranch hands before things could turn violent. Morrison ended up with a broken nose from Thomas's fist, and a warning that next time they would not be so gentle. After that, Morrison seemed to give up. Word reached the ranch that he had returned to Fort Bowie and started courting a widow with money. Isaac hoped that meant the matter was finally closed. Through the summer and into autumn, Isaac and Fiona's relationship deepened. They rode together every morning, checking fences and watching the cattle. She learned to help with ranch work, proving surprisingly adept at doctoring sick animals and keeping the account books. Mrs. Chen taught her to make bread and can vegetables and knit socks. But more than the work, they simply enjoyed each other's company. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. They played cards and chess. They read together. They took long walks along the river, and Isaac taught her the names of birds and plants. Fiona taught him poetry, reciting verses from memory while they sat under the stars. Isaac fell more in love with her every day. He loved her laugh, bright and unrestrained. He loved her fierce intelligence and her compassion. He loved the way she sang while cooking and the concentrated expression she wore when balancing accounts. He loved her strength, the courage she had shown in choosing her own path despite the risks. On a clear October evening, 6 months after he found her in the blizzard, Isaac asked Fiona to take a walk with him. They climbed to their favorite spot, the ridge overlooking the valley, where autumn colors painted the landscape in gold and crimson. "Fiona," he began, then stopped, suddenly nervous despite all his preparation. She waited patiently, a small smile playing at her lips as if she knew what was coming. "When I found you in that storm, I never imagined how completely you would change my life. I thought I was happy before, but now I know I was just content. You make me happy. You make me want to be better, to build something lasting, to create a real home instead of just a ranch." He pulled a ring from his pocket, a simple gold band set with a small sapphire. It had been his grandmother's. "I love you, Fiona Sterling. I love your courage and your kindness and your sharp mind. I love the way you challenge me and comfort me. I love everything about you. Will you marry me?" Fiona's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling so wide her face seemed to glow. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, Isaac Keller, I will marry you. I love you too, so much it sometimes frightens me. You gave me back my life, but more than that, you gave me a future worth living. Yes, I will marry you." Isaac slipped the ring onto her finger, and then she was in his arms, kissing him with a joy that made him dizzy. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and grinning, the sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in impossible colors. "When?" Fiona asked. "When should we marry?" "Whenever you want," Isaac replied. "Tomorrow or next year. I am yours for as long as you will have me." Soon, Fiona decided. I do not want to wait. I have wasted too much time already being afraid. Let us marry soon and start our life together properly. They married a month later in a small ceremony at the ranch. Thomas stood up as Isaac's best man, and Mrs. Chen stood with Fiona. The circuit preacher, a cheerful man named Reverend Mason, performed the ceremony in the ranch house parlor with all the ranch hands in attendance. Fiona wore a dress of dark blue silk that Mrs. Chen had sewn for her, simple but beautiful. Isaac wore his best suit, the one he had bought in Helena and rarely had occasion to wear. When he saw Fiona coming down the stairs, his breath caught. She was radiant, her eyes shining with love and certainty. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising partnership and respect, love and support, honesty and devotion. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac kissed her gently, mindful of their audience but unable to hide his joy. The celebration lasted into the evening, with Mrs. Chen's cooking and several bottles of whiskey Thomas had procured for the occasion. The ranch hands danced and sang, and even Mrs. Chen allowed herself a glass of wine. It was nothing like the elaborate wedding Fiona had fled from, but it was perfect because it was real, chosen, and full of love. Late in the evening, Isaac and Fiona slipped away to the privacy of their bedroom. The house that had been Isaac's alone was now truly theirs, made into a home by Fiona's presence. Isaac carried her over the threshold out of tradition, and she laughed, delighted. "Are you happy?" he asked as he set her down gently. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Fiona replied. She reached up to touch his face, her fingers gentle against his jaw. "Thank you for finding me in that storm. Thank you for giving me the chance to choose. Thank you for loving me." "Thank you for choosing me," Isaac said, covering her hand with his. "I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." Their wedding night was gentle and sweet, full of tender discoveries and whispered promises. Isaac was patient and careful, knowing Fiona's past fears, and she rewarded his gentleness with trust and passion. They fell asleep in each other's arms as the moon rose over the Montana plains, two people who had found each other against all odds. The winter that followed was harsh but beautiful. Isaac and Fiona settled into married life with surprising ease. They worked together managing the ranch, and Isaac was impressed by how quickly Fiona learned the business. She had a head for numbers and a fair hand with negotiations, and soon she was handling much of the ranch's correspondence and bookkeeping. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, Fiona knitting or mending while Isaac carved wood or cleaned tack, talking about their days and making plans for the future. They wanted to expand the herd and build a proper schoolhouse on the property for when they had children. They talked about traveling to Denver someday, and maybe even back east to Boston so Fiona could see a real city. But mostly they just enjoyed being together, learning each other's rhythms and habits, building the foundation of a lifetime partnership. Spring brought new challenges and joys. Two of their cows had difficult births, and Fiona stayed up all night with Isaac helping deliver the calves. She proved to have a natural skill with animals, gentle but firm when needed. They lost one calf despite their best efforts, but saved 3 others that might have died without intervention. In April, Fiona discovered she was pregnant. She told Isaac on a bright morning when they were checking the southern fence line. She had been quieter than usual all morning, and finally, as they stopped to water the horses, she blurted it out. "I am going to have a baby." Isaac dropped the canteen he had been holding. "You are certain?" Mrs. Chen confirmed it this morning. "She says I am about 2 months along, which means the baby should arrive in October." Fiona watched his face anxiously. "Are you pleased? I know we did not plan it so soon." Isaac pulled her into his arms, laughing with pure joy. "Pleased, Fiona, I am beyond pleased. I am overjoyed. We are going to be parents." They celebrated quietly that evening, just the two of them and Mrs. Chen, who cried happy tears and immediately began planning how to convert the spare room into a nursery. Isaac found himself daydreaming about teaching a son to ride or reading to a daughter by the fire. He did not care which, as long as the child and Fiona were healthy. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer. Fiona continued working on the ranch, though Isaac and Mrs. Chen both insisted she take more breaks and avoid heavy lifting. She complained about being coddled but secretly seemed pleased by the attention. In late June, they received unexpected news. Gerald Sterling was dead, killed in a bar fight in Fort Bowie. Neither Fiona nor Isaac pretended to mourn him, though Fiona admitted to some sadness over what might have been if he had been a better man. "He was not always cruel," she told Isaac one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "When he first married my mother, he seemed kind. But drink and debt changed him. I wish he had been different, but I cannot regret how things turned out. If he had not sold me to Morrison, I never would have run, and I never would have found you." Strange how the worst moments can lead to the best outcomes, Isaac mused, his hand resting gently on Fiona's growing belly. He felt a small kick against his palm and smiled. "Our child certainly seems to agree." The baby, a boy, arrived on a cold October morning almost exactly a year after Isaac and Fiona had married. The birth was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Isaac paced the hallway outside their bedroom, useless and terrified, while Mrs. Chen and the midwife from town attended Fiona. When he finally heard the baby's cry, Isaac nearly collapsed with relief. Mrs. Chen emerged a few minutes later, smiling broadly. "You have a son. A big healthy boy with good lungs. And Fiona did wonderfully. She is tired but well." Isaac rushed inside to find Fiona propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a small bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up as he entered, her face glowing with joy and love. "Meet your son," she said softly. Isaac approached carefully, awed by the tiny person in her arms. The baby had a shock of dark hair and a red, scrunched face. As Isaac watched, the infant opened his eyes, revealing dark blue depths that would probably lighten as he grew. "He is perfect," Isaac breathed. "You are amazing. Thank you. We made him together," Fiona said, smiling. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months but never settled on anything definite. Now, looking at his son, Isaac knew with sudden certainty. "James," he said. "James Henry Keller, after both our fathers." His father had been Henry and Fiona's father had been James, before Gerald Sterling had entered her life. "To honor the good men who came before and hope he grows to be like them." "James Henry Keller," Fiona repeated, testing the name. "I love it." "Hello, James. Welcome to the world." Baby James proved to be a healthy, hungry infant who kept them awake most nights for the first few months. Isaac and Fiona took turns walking him around the house when he fussed, singing lullabies and telling him stories. Mrs. Chen proclaimed him the finest baby she had ever seen, which Isaac suspected she said about all babies, but he appreciated it anyway. Being a father changed Isaac in ways he had not anticipated. He became more cautious, more aware of dangers he had previously ignored. But he also found new joy in simple things, watching James discover his own hands or smile his first real smile. He loved reading to his son before bed, even though James was too young to understand the words. He loved watching Fiona with their child, the tender way she nursed him and sang to him and loved him fiercely. The ranch prospered over the following years. Isaac made smart decisions about breeding stock and land management, and Fiona's business acumen kept them solvent even in lean years. They built that schoolhouse they had dreamed of, knowing James would need education as he grew. When James was 2, Fiona became pregnant again. Their second child, a daughter they named Sarah Grace, arrived in the spring of 1885. She had her mother's fair hair and her father's dark eyes, and she was calmer than James had been, content to observe the world around her with solemn attention. James adored his little sister, though he sometimes grew jealous when she monopolized their parents' attention. Isaac tried to make special time for his son, teaching him to ride a gentle pony and helping him build toy corrals for his carved wooden animals. The years passed in a rhythm of seasons and celebrations, challenges and triumphs. They weathered harsh winters and drought summers. They celebrated birthdays and holidays. They dealt with cattle diseases and broke broncs and fixed endless fences. Through it all, Isaac and Fiona's love grew deeper and stronger, tempered by shared experience and mutual respect. When James turned 7, they hired a teacher for the schoolhouse, a young woman named Emily Porter from Ohio who was looking for adventure out west. She proved excellent with children, and soon several neighboring families were sending their kids to the school as well. The ranch became a small community hub, with families gathering for Christmas parties and 4th of July celebrations. Morrison never bothered them again. They heard through the grapevine that he had married that widow and moved to Wyoming, where he eventually died of a heart attack. His death was a footnote in their lives, barely remarked upon. The fear he had once represented had faded long ago, replaced by the security of family and community. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac took Fiona back to the ridge where he had proposed. It was a warm November day, unseasonably mild, with golden lights slanting across the valley. Their children were home with Mrs. Chen, who was now in her 70s but still sharp and vigorous. 10 years, Fiona marveled, standing in the circle of Isaac's arms, looking out over land that had become truly theirs. Can you believe it has been 10 years? Some days it feels like forever, Isaac said. Other days it feels like we just met. Do you have any regrets? Fiona asked, tilting her head back to look up at him. About finding me that night, about everything that came after. Not a single one, Isaac said firmly. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You and James and Sarah, the life we have built together. I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Even the part where Morrison tried to shoot you. Even that part, Isaac confirmed. That particular incident had occurred 3 years ago, just before Morrison left for Wyoming. It had been a final, desperate attempt at revenge that had failed miserably when Thomas had disarmed him. It makes for a good story, at least. Fiona laughed, the same bright sound that had captivated Isaac from the beginning. We have a lot of good stories now. And we will make many more, Isaac promised. He kissed her softly, still marveling that this woman was his, that she had chosen him and continued choosing him every day. I love you, Fiona Keller. I love you too, she replied. Thank you for warming me by your fire that night. Thank you for offering me a future when I thought I had none. Thank you for trusting me, Isaac said, for giving me a chance to prove not all men are like Morrison or your stepfather, for making this house a home. They stood together as the sun set, just as they had 10 years ago, but now they were not tentative and new. They were seasoned and sure, partners who had weathered storms both literal and figurative. They were husband and wife, parents and lovers, best friends and confidants. As they walked back to the ranch house, hand in hand, they could hear their children's laughter drifting across the evening air. James was probably playing some wild game, and Sarah was likely trying to keep up with her adventurous older brother. Mrs. Chen would be starting dinner, filling the house with good smells and warmth. It was a good life, an honest life, built on love and respect and hard work. It was not always easy, but it was always worth it. Isaac squeezed Fiona's hand and she squeezed back, a silent conversation that needed no words. By the time they reached the house, stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Isaac held the door open for Fiona, and they stepped inside together, leaving the cool evening behind. The children rushed to greet them, and Mrs. Chen called that dinner was ready, and life went on in all its beautiful, ordinary glory. That night, after the children were asleep and Mrs. Chen had retired to her cottage, Isaac and Fiona sat together in their bedroom, preparing for sleep. Fiona brushed out her hair while Isaac banked the fire, their nightly routine so familiar it was almost meditative. "Isaac," Fiona said suddenly, "do you ever think about what would have happened if that storm had not come, if you had not found me?" Isaac considered the question seriously. "I try not to. It is too painful to imagine." "I would have died," Fiona said quietly. "Or I would have married Morrison and died slowly of unhappiness. Either way, I would not have had this life. I would not have you or James or Sarah. I would not have known what real love feels like." "But the storm did come," Isaac reminded her gently, "and I did find you. Everything else is just speculation. I know. But sometimes I am overwhelmed by how lucky we are, how easily things could have gone differently." Fiona set down her brush and turned to face him. "I never want to take this for granted, Isaac. I never want to forget how precious it is, what we have." "Neither do I," Isaac promised. He crossed the room and took her hands in his. "Every day I wake up grateful. Grateful for you, for our children, for this life we have built." "I will never take it for granted." Fiona smiled, her eyes shining with emotion. "Good. Because I plan to love you for a very long time, Isaac Keller. You are stuck with me." "I can think of worse fates," Isaac said with a grin. He pulled her close, and she came willingly, settling against his chest with a contented sigh. They stayed like that for a long moment, simply holding each other, two people who had found in each other everything they needed. The years continued to unfold with a mix of joy and challenge. James grew into a responsible young man, showing his father's steady temperament and his mother's quick mind. At 15, he was already taking on significant ranch responsibilities, learning to manage stock and negotiate sales. Isaac was proud of the man his son was becoming, fair and hardworking, with his mother's compassion and sense of justice. Sarah, at 13, was quieter than her brother but no less impressive. She loved books and learning, spending hours in their small library reading everything she could find. She also had a gift with horses, able to calm even the wildest bronc with patience and soft words. Isaac suspected she would either become a teacher like her grandmother or a veterinarian if she could find the training. When James turned 17, he announced his intention to court Emily Porter's younger sister, Alice, who had come west to visit and decided to stay. She was a sweet girl, sensible and kind, and after initial parental concern about their young ages, Isaac and Fiona gave their blessing. They would wait until James was 20 to marry, giving them both time to be certain, but Isaac recognized the look in his son's eyes. It was the same way he looked at Fiona. "He is so young," Fiona worried one night after James and Alice had spent the evening holding hands on the porch. "He is 18 now," Isaac reminded her. "The same age you were when you ran from Morrison, old enough to know his own mind." "That is what worries me. I thought I knew my own mind at that age, but I was terrified and desperate." Fiona paused, then shook her head. "But James is not me and Alice is not Morrison. They have the freedom to choose that I never did." "Exactly," Isaac said. We raised him to think for himself, to treat people with respect. Now we have to trust that he learned those lessons. And James did. He courted Alice with old-fashioned respect, always chaperoned, always proper. When he finally proposed on his 20th birthday, it was with Isaac's blessing and a ring he had saved 6 months to buy. The wedding was held at the ranch, a joyful affair that reminded Isaac of his own simple ceremony years earlier. Watching his son marry made Isaac feel old and young simultaneously. Old because his baby boy was now a man with a wife and plans for his own future. Young because he remembered so clearly standing where James stood, promising forever to the woman he loved. James and Alice built a small house on ranch land, intending to help run the operation while eventually inheriting it. Isaac was grateful his son wanted to continue the legacy, to preserve what 3 generations of Kellers had built. 2 years later, Sarah announced she wanted to attend a teaching college in Denver. It was difficult for Fiona to let her daughter go so far away, but Isaac convinced her it was necessary. Sarah needed to follow her own dreams, just as Fiona had needed to escape and choose her own path. "She will come back," Isaac assured his wife as they watched Sarah's stagecoach disappear toward Denver. "The ranch is in her blood, but she needs to see the world first, to learn what is out there before she can appreciate what is here." He was right. Sarah returned after 2 years with a teaching certificate, and a young surveyor named David, whom she had met at a church social. They married and settled in town, where Sarah opened her own school, and David worked mapping the growing territory. They visited the ranch often, and Sarah's eyes always went soft when she looked across the valley, the land of her childhood calling to something deep in her soul. Isaac and Fiona grew older together gracefully. His hair went silver at the temples, and lines deepened around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun. Fiona's dark hair showed threads of white, and she developed a habit of pressing her hand to her lower back after a long day. But they were healthy and active, still riding together most mornings, still sitting on the porch in the evenings watching the sunset. Mrs. Chen passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 83 during a particularly beautiful spring. The whole community mourned her, gathering at the ranch for a funeral that celebrated her long, full life. Isaac wept openly, remembering the countless ways she had supported him after his mother died, how she had welcomed Fiona without question, how she had loved his children like her own grandchildren. They buried her in the ranch cemetery next to her husband and Isaac's parents, overlooking the valley she had loved. Fiona planted a rose bush at the head of her grave, and every year it bloomed profusely, pink flowers bright against the Montana sky. Life continued in its rhythms. James and Alice had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, who filled the ranch with noise and laughter. Sarah and David had twin daughters who visited often, splitting their time between town and ranch. Isaac became a grandfather and then a great-grandfather, watching his family grow and flourish across the land he had worked so hard to build. On a crisp autumn evening in 1910, Isaac and Fiona sat on their porch as they had done thousands of times before. Isaac was 72 now, Fiona 66. His joints ached more than they used to, and her eyesight was fading, but they were together, and that was what mattered. 35 years, Fiona said softly, echoing a conversation from long ago. "Can you believe it has been 35 years since you found me in that blizzard?" "Some days yes, some days no," Isaac replied, his hand finding hers by instinct. "But I have never stopped being grateful for that storm. Neither have I." Fiona squeezed his hand gently. "Do you know what I think about sometimes?" "What is that?" All the women who did not get to run. who married men like Morrison because they had no choice, who lived lives of quiet desperation. I was so lucky, Isaac. Lucky that the storm came, lucky that you found me, lucky that you were the man you were. Isaac corrected gently. The man I am not dead yet. Fiona laughed, the sound still bright despite her years. No, you are not. And I plan to keep you around for a good while longer. Someone has to argue with me about which grandchild is the most stubborn. That would be Thomas's boy, Isaac said immediately, referring to James's middle son. He has his grandmother's determination. You mean her stubbornness? I said what I meant. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their grandson, that very Thomas, playing in the yard with his siblings and cousins. The boy was 7, bright and wild, always into something. He reminded Isaac of James at that age, full of energy and curiosity. I want you to know something, Fiona said after a while, in case I do not get another chance to say it properly. You will have plenty of chances, Isaac assured her, but he heard the seriousness in her tone. Maybe. But still. Fiona turned to look at him, her summer sky eyes faded but still beautiful. You gave me a life beyond anything I imagined, not just safety or security, though you gave me those. You gave me love, real love, the kind that grows and deepens and never fades. You gave me children and grandchildren, purpose and partnership. You gave me everything. Isaac felt his throat tighten with emotion. You gave me just as much. More, probably. You took a lonely cowboy and turned him into a husband and father. You made this ranch a home. You taught me that love is not just a feeling but a choice we make every day. We chose well then, Fiona said with satisfaction. We chose perfectly. They sat together as the sun set, as they had done for 35 years, as they would continue doing for as long as they had. Around them, their family laughed and played, building their own memories on the foundation Isaac and Fiona had laid. The ranch would continue after they were gone, passing to James and then to his children, generation after generation carrying forward the legacy. But that was far in the future. For now, there was just this moment, this evening, this quiet peace of two people who had weathered every storm together and emerged stronger for it. Isaac squeezed Fiona's hand, and she squeezed back, and they watched the stars emerge one by one over the Montana plains, the same stars that had shone the night he found her, the same stars that would shine long after they were both gone. Inside the house, someone called that dinner was ready. Children's voices rose in excitement, and Isaac heard James telling them to wash their hands first. The sounds of family, of home, of love continuing through the generations. Ready? Fiona asked, standing slowly and offering him her hand. Always, Isaac replied, taking it. They walked inside together, leaving the cool evening behind, stepping into the warm house full of light and laughter and love. They ate dinner surrounded by family, the table crowded with children and grandchildren, the conversation loud and chaotic and perfect. After the meal, the youngest children climbed into Isaac's lap and begged for a story. He obliged, telling them about the great blizzard of 1875, though he edited the scarier parts for young ears. And that is how I met your grandmother, he finished, Fiona smiling beside him. The best day of my life, though I did not know it at the time. Tell us again, Grandpa, one of the twins demanded. Maybe tomorrow, Fiona interceded gently. It is past bedtime for little ones. The children were bundled off to bed, and eventually, the house quieted as everyone found their rooms. Isaac and Fiona prepared for sleep in the same bedroom they had shared for 35 years, the routine so familiar, it required no thought. As they lay in bed, Fiona curled against Isaac's side, her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for the fire," she murmured sleepily, words that had become a private joke between them over the years. Thank you for finding your way to it, Isaac replied, kissing her forehead. I love you, Fiona. I love you too, Isaac. Forever. They fell asleep like that, together as they had been for 35 years, as they would be for however many years remained. Outside, the Montana wind whispered through the grass, gentle now, carrying no threat, only the promise of another sunrise, another day, another chance to choose love. The blizzard that had brought them together was long past, but its gift remained. Two lives intertwined, a family built on love and respect, a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. It had started with a cowboy's fire offering warmth to a desperate bride, and it had become forever, just as the best love stories do. And in that warm house on the Montana plains, surrounded by the family they had created, Isaac and Fiona slept peacefully. Their story complete, their love eternal, their forever assured.